Namaste, my friend. Today we will recap the Eastern wisdom is a science, is a knowledge, is mandatory to exist. We have a knowledge of physics, we have a knowledge of biology, chemistry, astronomy. So the knowledge of the Eastern wisdom is bound to exist. Why? For self-discovery. For bringing an end to the sufferings at the physical level, at the mental level. Yes, no doubt, we can take care of the physical suffering through the modern science. We can also take care of the natural calamities. We cannot stop those natural calamities like tsunami, flood, etc. But we can delay, we are trying hard, but still, when the tsunami comes, there is a warning, there is a prevention. We cannot directly control it. That also causes a lot of suffering. Third level of the suffering is purely mental, emotional, uh, mental, emotional in our personal, professional, social lives. We cannot stop it. Can we? Yes, we can. And the Eastern wisdom helps us to bring an end to the suffering. That is the one aspect of the Eastern wisdom. But just bringing an end to the suffering is not the end of the journey. We have to discover peace, happiness, love, wisdom. No, I know it. No, normally people say, I love my honey and I love. Oh, really? You love? Do you love all the time? Yes. Or no? The answer is no. The person whom we love, the mind puts a condition that if you act, behave, think like the way I think, that is one condition. And second condition is that because I like you, hence I love you. But if I dislike you, do I love? Do I like my honey all the time? From where that liking and disliking comes from the mind? The mind creates likes and dislikes. Mind, when creates likes and dislikes, and then we love, that is attachment, that is emotional dependence. Have you heard about unconditional love? One is the conditional love. Conditional love is attachment, is delusion, is is stress, is suffering, is problem, is pain. Conditional love, understand it clearly. Conditional peace, conditional happiness, conditional joy. The first thing that comes in the mind that I should like it before I love someone. But if I dislike, then love is not there. It is attachment. But unconditional love. So the entire humanity since our birth has been heavily conditioned based on the likes and dislikes, and that causes conditional peace, the conditional love, the conditional happiness and the joy. That is what the attachment is. And that is what the emotional dependence is. This is one example. So, for Eastern wisdom has twofold goals. One is to bring an end to the suffering of all kinds, and second is to discover beyond conditional peace, there is a permanent peace in all locations, in all relationships, all the time. So, what happens to the life? We start celebrating the life. The Eastern wisdom aims at making our entire life a celebration. We should keep in mind what is physics? It is a material phenomena in the matter. So, what is matter? The atom. And matter, we have many elements, that is the process, step by step we move to the higher and the higher knowledge to reach to the final point. Eastern wisdom helps us step by step process to reach to that step. So once we have understood clearly the twofold goals of the Eastern wisdom, the question comes how to start the journey. How to start the journey. Where we are. How to know where we are, how much I'm aware of myself. Self-awareness is the beginning and the self-awareness is the end of the journey. No, what is this self-awareness? Am I aware of the challenges that I have been facing throughout my life since birth? I behaved and acted in a particular way, and then I reacted and I experienced the pain and the suffering. Have I ever thought of finding an answer, the cause of my suffering, even if you are 100% right and the other is wrong, and still I'm suffering? Then we created a wrong notion that, it's very difficult to digest the truth. Truth is the knowledge. Knowledge should bring the happiness. So there is some challenges there. So when I ask the question that how to start the journey, I have to become aware of myself. What do you mean by aware of myself? I should be aware of my physical level, mental level, emotional level, how I behave, how I respond to the people. What exactly are the goals in my life and goal of life? Take one example. My goal is to make a person close to me happy. that person is independent, so I'm also independent. But I'm trying hard to make that person happy through my behavior, through my speech, through my action. Is it possible? That person can change anytime. Even I may be speaking what is 100% right, the other person will take it wrong, will react. Can I make anyone happy? So that is why how to start the journey, we have to be very clear that I cannot make the world happy. I have to make myself happy. I have to find it. I should have. If I don't have control over myself, then I should have control. I should be able to change my behavior, attitude, actions in my daily living so that the peace and the happiness revealed from within. And for that, We need to observe, we need to understand our behavior, our attitude, our responses, our perception, our opinion, our suggestion, our understanding of who we are. We have reached to the point in Eastern wisdom. Eastern wisdom says, find out who you are. Who am I? What is the world outside? What is that existence? Now, for example, you have discovered who you are. You have you have understood the exact nature of the world outside. You have known what is existence. Will you have any problem? Will you be suffering? I know who am I. When I know I am in peace and happiness, my nature is peace and happiness. You have realized it in the core of your heart. With every breath, you have realized that. Will you ever be in stress and suffering? So when I do not know, Eastern wisdom says we are living in ignorance. When we know it, we are living in opposite of ignorance, that is knowledge. It's a science of living. Science of life is biology. They do experiments on the dead and they see the physiological, biochemical, psychological responses to a particular medication. They experiment on the rat and the monkeys. We experiment on ourselves consciously. It's a conscious process. So you see that how to start the journey, I have to observe myself. I have to check what behavior, attitude, and action causes the stress. And from there, we can start the journey. So, examination, we examine those areas of our life, and gradually we reach to a point where we find this delusion, this suffering is nothing but a cause, but nothing but it is a matter of ignorance. And by knowledge, we remove. There another question comes, that then what prevents me to discover who am I? I'm ready. Am I ready? The guy was running in the west direction in search of the sun. So when I'm running in the direction of the west early in the morning, I will never be able to find the sun. So a monk heard him crying, I'm in searching, I'm in running because I want to find the sun. The monk caught hold of him. He said, Stand. No, I'm in search of the sun. And he turned his face opposite, in an opposite direction, in the direction of the east. He said, Here is the sun. Wow, I found the sun. So we should be very clear in which direction we have to embark our journey. If we embark our journey in the west direction, but at present we don't know who am I. So we have to follow the principles of Eastern wisdom, which helps us to follow the right direction, to change the state of our mind, to drop that ignorance. One example, no, one example in our daily life that happens, a relation comes to us and I get stressed. So my mind normally blames the other person for my stress, for my anger. When the mind blames, it wants to run. And once it starts the blame and complain, you have millions of thoughts about that person. Our mind writes the dictionary, our mind writes the encyclopedia about that person. Am I running in the west direction or east? For that, I need an awareness. So, one approach is that other person, situation, relationship, condition are responsible for my suffering. I believe you are paying attention. But other point is, what is the other point? I'm blaming. Am I asking why I'm blaming? Am I in anxiety? Am I asking, let me explore the point of anxiety experience in my mind before I should blame others? So I have changed the direction from outside to inside. The moment we change the direction, we raise our level of awareness. In that heightened state of awareness, we go to the point of anxiety or the stress that we are experiencing in our mind. We find the cause behind that anxiety or the stress. We recognize that it is my mind which enacted a play, then the same mind forgot who am I, and in a spur of moment we were angry and hesitated. And that cause is ignorance. We have to remove the ignorance from that mind. In the moment, that is the journey of the East and West. Now, see that we have understood this point, then our mind says that I understand, but my mind does not change. What should I do? That's a normal question comes to the. Very good. So now we have a question that it is my mind and my mind does not change. What should I do? So normally people wants to find another solution, let others change. And in the process of changing others, we fall back to a strained relationship, stress and suffering with the near and dear ones. We fall into anxiety, duality, and a conflict because the mind has started looking outside. Mind has started looking outside. And this mind gets so much obsessed that it carries its impression in the form of a thought, feeling, and emotion that it does not want to leave and drop. That is why we say the mind is impulsive, mind is instinctive, mind is habitual. Take one example. How many times we were upset? Maybe 100 times, maybe 1,000 times, maybe n number of times. What was our experience being upset? We were a little bit stressed, we were anxious, we reacted. Then what? Then the mind realized there is no reason to get upset. When it realizes, sometime we realize after a few days, sometime we realize after a few hours. So, how many times we were upset and how many times we realized after a few hours and few days? How many times? N number of times. So now the next question comes. When I realize it is futile to be upset and anxious, which I have realized after getting into the stress, why shouldn't I realize at the very beginning? Why shouldn't I realize at the very beginning? So, what prevents me to realize that? Ignorance. I didn't know that. I should have done it before, so that I should kept the continuity of the peace and the restfulness and the calmness. So now the next question comes, how to realize that I should not be upset. I should have the right knowledge that should prevent me from any kind of emotional bondage and being upset and duality and a conflict. So then we should go deeper into our own mind. We should check what kind of behavior and impressions it has accumulated over the years. And when we change that, how to change that? When we change that, the life will become a celebration. But how to change? By knowledge. By knowledge. How to get that knowledge? By listening and learning the principles of Eastern wisdom. And we discussed many a times, simply the moment you have an anxiety, tell yourself, I don't know, let me know it. The second step to enlighten the mind, that I do not understand, but let me understand it. So I have understood the cause of the anxiety is created by the past impression that is already living in the mind with reference to the strong likes and dislikes and kind of an obsession in emotional bondage. Okay, then what should I do? No, I don't experience the change, so let me practice. Never forget these. Anytime you have stress and anxiety, duality, and oh, I don't understand my nature, let me understand it. Is it worthy to be into anxiety then solve a problem, or is it worth to be in peace and solve the problem? That is what the Eastern wisdom tells us. From the next week, we will cover the 40 steps to awakening and realization. That that brings all the principles. Major are the 40 steps, or you can say, if you can compress these 40 steps, it becomes only the 5 steps. But we cannot understand those 5 steps so Explanation is 40 steps, and in each step we have sub steps. So the entire journey of the Eastern wisdom we will start in 40 steps from the next week. So we have answered the question, that is the way we have to change the mind. What happens when the mind does not change? Now see the other side of it. We have tried, we have done the practice, and the mind keeps on repeating, I am not changing, I am not changing. It is changing. You have done a single practice, it is going to help you. It is preventing you from lot of anxiety, fears, and stress in the future. But we don't realize it. Why we don't realize it? The mind does not want us to realize it, wants to follow the same habit, instinctive behavior. Then what happens? We experience the guilt, frustration, failure. we experience we experience guilt, frustration, failure, fear, and then what happens to the mind? The mind enters into the conflict. What is that conflict? The conflict between the intellect and the mind. What is that conflict? Understand it clearly. What is that? Intellect has the right knowledge. It has understood. That's why it is continuing the journey. Clear? But when the mind takes over the intellect starts singing in tune, singing the same tone with the mind. So that intellect, because of domination of the mind, says guilt. I have a lot of guilt, I'm not able to change. So the mind has taken over the intellect, instantly recognize that. So when we recognize that, there is a problem. That is the reason we have a guilt, we have a failure, we have a frustration. You see how subtler the understanding of the Eastern wisdom. You make a mistake at any point, mind takes over the intellect. And what is the mind? Impulsive nature, emotional bondage. Then the intellect starts singing the same tune. We start. There is one option: mind either blames others or mind blames oneself. And it takes the help of the intellect. No, we have to be very careful in that. Anytime. Simple principle. Anytime we have a blame, complaint, reaction, duality, conflict, first thing, declare that you are not worthy of suffering. It is delusion. Force the mind. And then start contemplating and reflecting. Find out the cause. So if we don't have a guilt or frustration, then what happens? The mind says, my happiness is in the hands of others. So I am very weak. What should I do? So when we find the weaknesses within, where is that weakness? Because my happiness, my love, my wisdom, my joy are in the hands of others. And the moment the mind declares this, it starts living habitually, instinctively. And when it starts living habitually, instinctively, it is open to an attack. That mind is open to an attack. What is that attack? It's a fear, it's an insecurity, it's a sense of unhappiness, it's a failure, it's a frustration. We do not see the cause of the sorrow inside. We blame, we complain others for our fear, frustration, failure. That is one way, the one track of the mind. Other track of the mind, that if the mind says you are totally frustrated, nothing can be done. And another track of the weakness of the mind, we start attacking ourselves, and that is what the guilt, fear, and frustration. But in both the cases, we are open to frustration, we are open to fear, we are open to anxiety, we are open to reaction, we are open to unhappiness, we are open to failure. I believe you are getting into it. We have to change that mindset. We have to change that mindset. The mind is the cause of ignorance, and that is where we started. And the same mind is the cause of happiness. When the mind follows these two tracks, cause of suffering, when the mind leaves these two tracks, the mind goes inside, sits within in the state of silence. Out of the silence reveals the real self. The real self is of the nature of peace and happiness, love, truth, and wisdom. So, as we are progressing in our discussion, in our understanding, what exactly Eastern wisdom is saying? What should change? Should we change ourselves, or should we change the world outside? So, as you listen and learn, followed by you reflect on this, the knowledge must settle in our mind that nothing, no change in the world outside can bring me peace and happiness. No situation, no relations, no relations, no condition, no person, abundance of wealth cannot buy happiness. We have to change ourselves. Changing ourselves is changing the mind. Changing the mind means changing our thought, our speech, our action that results into behavior and attitude. There is no situational happiness, but we feel it. It is a delusion. There is no relational happiness. They all are attachment. There is no wealth happiness. If it is a wealth happiness, it's a situational happiness. If it is a relational happiness, create that relation, create that situation, create the wealth, and be happy. Think. We have to think. But if we see pragmatically, the world offers problems and opportunities. So when it offers an opportunity, it demands that you should be aware that opportunity may bring a short term pleasure, but not a permanent happiness. But how I see a particular situation as an opportunity because my mind is responding with the knowledge, with the clarity, with the focus. But what about the problem? Mind is unfavorably reacting, blaming, and complaining. That is known as the problem. And in the former case, it is an opportunity. In order to discover the opportunity in a problem, I have to learn how to keep the mind in the state of restfulness, in the state of the calm, to turn that problem into an opportunity, whether it's a problem, situational, relational, any problem in the world can really be dealt by the human race. Take an example. I like a particular event, and then it gives us a sense of pleasure. Then the mind says, keep on continuing that situation in your life. But no situation is permanent, it cannot continue forever. Hence, we have a problem. I'm bringing another. There is a pause. That pause is known as experience of pleasure. So I had a problem, and then there is a pause, a short term pleasure. I solve it. After that, the pleasure is gone. And that state, when the pleasure is gone, the mind has an unconscious fears, a sense of anxiety to repeat the same situation in our life. Oh, let me call my friend. You enter into a gossip. First few minutes, a sense of pleasure. Then the same mind gets bored. It says, how to stop talking. Enough is enough. This guy or a girl is talking unnecessarily. But you took the initiative. I believe you understand that very pause where the mind is not running towards the word, into the word, don't engage itself, that pause is known as a sense of pleasure. But if it is not running into the word, the mind finds the sense of emptiness, the aloofness, the loneliness. So it wants to engage in the world and then it is frustrated. My- that is why our master says that this 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 mind is the cause of all the problems and the challenges in our life. My goodness, it creates a negative situation. It creates an unfavorable condition. No, I entered into that unfavorable situation unknowingly, unconsciously, habitually. We don't know the way. We are going to learn all those ways how to take over the mind so that the mind unnecessarily do not fall into the trap. Pain, Pain has yet to manifest. See that, see. Pain or whether that pain may be a fear, a sense of anxiety, a loneliness, etc., etc. So now that is yet to manifest. I don't know it. It continues. It continues. And then you have a thought at a particular point. Let me call that guy. So you call that guy or a girl. Now ask yourself why you want to call that guy, because I like him or her. And now you start talking. First few minutes you enjoy it. But now that guy or a girl keeps on talking to you on about himself or herself. Now you have a boredom. And the boredom results into reaction. Now you cannot leave the call. You feel frustrated. Now the call is left. Now you are frustrated. From where you started? At least you did not manifest those challenges. So you were definitely calm. But in the search of that calmness and peace, you called and you entered into the reaction. No, no, I'm not going to call. This is too much. This is what I say, the pain unmanifest. Either we have a pleasure, yes, and the pleasure in the beginning, that is simply a pause. The mind has stopped searching because you are talking to your friend. But if the friend keeps on talking, that causes a boredom. My goodness. That is what happens to majority of the people. Don't we check our mind? Oh, that guy seems to be good, but he talks too much. So I'm not interested in talking. I'm not going to invite him or her, whatever it is. Same thing with the situation. Same thing with the food and everything in the world. The world, Buddha says, the world is suffering. Not the beautiful world that we see, that we do not color. If you don't color the world through your mind, full of expectation, that word is so beautiful. But we create our own world, we color it with sense of attachment, with the liking, with the disliking, with the favorable, with unfavorable, a lot of stuff. So we have to get rid of that word. That is what we are going to cover in these 40 steps. Millions of desires. So, what happens to this mind that mind fails to find the peace and happiness because it is running in the world outside? It is running in the world outside. So it wants to try so many things in order to secure peace and happiness. And that is the reason we have millions of desires. And because we have millions of desires, that is the reason the mind is wandering. The mind keeps on wandering. Out of wandering to the millions of the thought, it picks up certain thoughts where, with an attachment with a person or a situation, we were happy. So it get obsessed with those number of thoughts. That is what we say. It is my relationship. This is good. This is bad. This is favorable. This is all the play of the mind. My goodness. Millions and millions of desires. because my mind says I'm not yet happy, I'm still unhappy. I have a sense of dissatisfaction. I have a sense of dissatisfaction, unhappiness. I have a sense of insecurity. I have a fear and the failure. I want to continue to seek happiness in the world outside. Maybe I have failed. So, what happens to those people? They said, yes, in my first marriage I failed, I divorced, and now I would be happy with the second marriage. They are not unhappy. I have a lot of couples with. 40 years, I think, 40 years back, I read when I was in India that this guy married who lived in America. I don't want to name it. He married 10 times and he failed. He married 10 times means he failed 10 times. He still kept his frustration. And by repeating the same thing again and again, your frustration level goes very high. So after 10 failures, he went to a psychiatrist to seek his advice, counseling. And he had one question. After 10 failures, he had the right question. What was the question? Question was, tell me, doc, I am right or I was wrong. Doctor said, I need not to examine you. You are wrong because you failed 10 times. There is no reason to come to me. Go back, sit down, analyze, observe your mind. Why the mind repeated the same event 10 times and you fail? You are living unconsciously. After all, people learn from their experiences. You did not learn from your experiences, so you keep on repeating. So unless your mind changes, how it changes? By the knowledge, by an understanding, by the clarity, only then it is possible. So our masters says that we have to closely examine our effort to understand, can we classify these millions of desires into a threefold desire. I cannot live without an effort. As a human being, that is inherent in us, that we should make an effort. So we should make an effort towards any skill, using the skill. So when I use the skill, making an effort, that becomes the job and the career, whatever you say, job, career, occupation, profession, etc., etc. Am I doing it? Yes. Do I have a tremendous focus on what I'm doing? Yes. Did I recognize by putting an effort, I'm raising my skill, I'm gaining my knowledge into that particular direction? Yes. First effort is done. We need not to look back or look in. We look forward that we should continue to increase our skill sets in order to make the effort very smooth. But why we make the effort? That becomes our second goal in life. Normally, people say, I'm stressed in earning money in order to have a pleasure. Want to buy a home and buy a car, get married and have kids and buy the clothes and fly and go on vacation. That is what we use the money for. Reward. So we reward ourselves. We reward ourselves. But our mind is crazy. Have you heard the news of Sam Freed, who is caught by the federal agencies for cryptocurrency and investment, billions of dollars of people? So our master says that there should be a constant check on the mind, that we should not make unwanted effort which will stake our life. One. Second, we should not have our mind should not run after the unlimited pleasure, which makes me immoral, unethical, and we have to pay the price. Well, Sam Freed, he paid the price. He was for 5 years, everywhere he was in the news. In cryptocurrency, he made 10 or $15 billion, and then he demanded that let people come and invest in his venture, and all the investment of the people have gone. Unlimited desires. So that third goal we should keep in the mind, to keep the crazy mind under check. That's very important. Until the mind is totally transformed. We have 3 goals. So our master says, first understand these 3 goals in your life. Now the higher level of examination is required about these 3 goals. Making an effort, why you are making an effort. To earn money, why you are earning money. To buy a home, why you want to buy a home. To be happy. Our master says why you are not happy in the very beginning. Happiness is the goal. If the happiness is the goal, why don't you start with the happiness? So I get all kinds of pleasure. So why you are looking for the pleasure after 10 years of earning, or monthly earning, or a weekly earning? Why you are not happy? Why don't you start with the happiness? All your effort should begin with peace, should end with peace. Before your mind craves for any pleasure, you start with the happiness, and with the happiness. You recognize that the mind does not become crazy, or it should not become crazy, so that you exercise the control over the mind. But why we are talking about this? So all the 3 goals in the life for the 4th goal of life. What is that 4th goal? Permanent peace, happiness, love, and wisdom. Ask any person who is even average intellectual, who is ready to understand. Every human being will declare that I want peace in all locations, in all relations, in all situations, at all times. I want happiness in all situations, in all relations, at all the time. What that means? I'm seeking permanent peace and happiness. So why don't you seek permanent peace and happiness directly rather than waiting to make an effort to gain the skill set? Why don't you start your journey with the peace, making an effort? Why don't you start with the peace and happiness, getting some kind of a limited pleasure, so that, and why don't you keep your mind in check? So ultimately, our master says that the final goal or one goal of life is to evolve, is to follow the path of Eastern wisdom, to discover the real self, to find who am I, and to recognize that I am of the nature of peace and happiness. Those who are the highest level of seekers. I tell you, there was a there was a guy almost 80, 90 years ago who used to work in the convenience store, who used to sell uh, smoke. So someone told him that you go to, why don't you come with me to a master whose talk is organized in a village? So he went to the, just casually. The master said, real self, you have the real self, which is of the nature of permanent peace and happiness. So that was the summary. So while returning from that discourse or the talk, his mind kept on thinking, is my master selfish? That is why he told me that I am of the nature of peace and happiness. His mind is thinking. Then his mind said to him that there is no question why he should be selfish. Otherwise, he should not have told me that my nature is peace and happiness. And if he has said so, it means this is the truth, that my nature is peace and happiness. He reached home anytime, every time, in any situation. He kept on reminding himself that he is of the nature of peace and happiness. He need not to do any practice. After a few years, he became one of the great masters. He died long back. He died just, I would say, another 20, 25 years ago. He did not know any principles of Eastern wisdom except that there is a real self, which is veiled by the false self, created by the mind because of emotional dependence. And there is only one reason to keep on reminding, to bring about a total change in our life. Think of this. The, he was the highest level of a seeker. Buddha, as a young prince, went to the street, saw the people were gathered and taking a dead body to the cremation ground. He asked, What happened to this guy? He is dead. He never knew that. His dad hid these challenges in the suffering because he kept Buddha confined into the kingdom. He warned everyone Buddha, should not encounter any kind of the suffering in the world. But he saw it. He went back home to the palace. He started thinking, if this guy body is dead, I also have a body and then I will also die. Oh, is this the life? We'll talk in detail. Like this, he encountered the three big challenges that we become old, we lose the capacity and abilities even to walk, right? And the sickness. And his mind dropped all the craziness. He got enlightened.